The first morning Emily Carter arrived at Camp Waverly, the Marine Corps' training base in North Carolina. The air was thick with humidity and testosterone. The sound of shouting sergeants, clanging metal weights, and the thud of boots hitting gravel filled the compound. She stepped out of the transport van, a clipboard in hand, wearing simple khaki pants and a tucked-in navy blue shirt with a civilian ID badge clipped to her belt. Her hair, tied into a neat bun, glistened faintly under the southern sun. A few Marines nearby slowed their pace to stare. To them, she looked like a misplaced intern, fragile, quiet, and too polished for the grit of their world. "Civilian logistics trainee," one whispered to another. "Bet she won't last a week." The other snorted. "You can smell the perfume from here. Office type. Not field ready." Emily heard it, every word, but didn't react. She simply adjusted the strap of her backpack and walked toward the administration building, her steps light, deliberate. There was something disciplined in her movement, almost military, though few noticed it beneath her modest appearance. Inside the office, the clerk barely looked up. Name? Emily Carter. He scanned his list lazily. "Civilian Logistics Trainee Program, 3 months, right?" "Yes, sir." "You'll report to Sergeant Parker for field coordination sessions and Captain Lyle for administrative training. Don't wander. And don't expect anyone to go easy on you because you're not enlisted." "I wouldn't expect that," she said quietly. Outside, she followed a Marine to her assigned barracks. The walk across the base was long and loud, drills on one side, vehicle engines revving on the other. Every few minutes, someone shouted commands. The energy of the place was relentless, almost aggressive. When she reached the female dormitory, a group of enlisted women were sitting on the steps. They looked her up and down with curiosity. "You lost?" one asked, raising an eyebrow. "No, ma'am." "Civilian logistics trainee," Emily replied softly. The woman smirked. "Welcome to hell, sweetheart. Hope you packed a spine." Laughter followed as Emily entered the building. She smiled faintly, not from humor, but from familiarity. She'd been through worse than laughter. Her room was small but tidy. A single bed, a desk, a metal locker, and a window overlooking the field. She placed her bag on the bed and took a deep breath. This wasn't what she'd imagined when she signed up for the base integration program. She thought it would be paperwork, inventory audits, maybe a few field trips. But the Marine environment pulsed with energy and competition. Civilians here were treated as outsiders until they proved otherwise, and sometimes even that wasn't enough. She unpacked quietly, placing her folded clothes in the locker. From the bottom of her bag, she pulled out a worn photograph. 6 people in dusty uniforms, smiling in front of a rescue vehicle. A younger version of her stood among them, eyes fierce, sunburned, alive. Her thumb brushed across the image of a tall man beside her, Captain Dean Wallace, before she slid the photo into the drawer. That was another life, one she'd buried years ago. The next day began early. Sergeant Parker, a broad man with a voice like gravel, led the logistics trainees through the compound. "You're civilians," he barked. "But while you're here, you move with Marines. You learn how supply lines operate, how emergency responses are coordinated, and how to follow orders fast. You screw up, people can die. Got it?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the small group. Emily nodded without speaking. Parker's eyes caught hers. "You, Carter, you ever done field coordination before?" "A little," she replied. He smirked. "A little won't cut it here. You'll learn or you'll quit." She said nothing. He moved on, unimpressed. For the first week, Emily did what she was told, quietly, efficiently, without complaint. She cataloged supplies, shadowed Marines during training drills, and spent evenings studying base protocols. While others groaned about long hours, she seemed oddly calm, as if long hours were a relief compared to something heavier that haunted her past. The Marines, however, couldn't resist testing her limits. They'd leave heavy crates for her to move alone, or forget to include her in briefings. Once, 2 recruits switched her map during a field assignment, causing her to take a longer route under the blazing sun. She returned, drenched in sweat but unshaken, her paperwork flawless. The pranksters laughed until Sergeant Parker scolded them, not for the prank, but because her report was more accurate than theirs. At the mess hall, conversations often stopped when she entered. She wasn't one of them. No uniform, no insignia, no war stories. She ate in silence, observing. She watched how the chain of command flowed, how tension or humor shifted with leadership presence. Her eyes followed patterns, not people. She was learning again, though no one realized she was relearning something she once commanded by instinct. One evening, during a physical coordination session, a crate slipped from a forklift. Panic erupted as a recruit's leg got pinned under the edge. Marines rushed but shouted over one another, unsure who was in charge. Sergeant Parker was across the field. Emily dropped her notebook and ran toward the chaos. "Stop pulling," she ordered sharply. "You'll crush his leg further." The Marines froze, startled by her sudden authority. "3 of you, lift evenly on my count. You hold his head steady. You grab that metal rod. We'll use it for leverage." They obeyed almost automatically. Within seconds, the crate was lifted, the recruit pulled free, and pressure applied to his wound. When Parker arrived moments later, Emily had already stabilized the injury with makeshift bandages. "Who authorized you to give orders?" Parker demanded afterward, though his tone carried a hint of respect. "No one," she said evenly. He was bleeding out. He stared at her for a long moment before nodding. "Next time, wait for command." "Yes, sir." But word spread fast. The civilian girl had taken charge in an emergency. Some mocked her for overstepping. Others began to pay attention. That night, as Emily walked back to her dorm, she noticed a tall figure waiting by the gate. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Hall, the man they called Iron Wolf. He was a legend on base, battle-hardened, disciplined, a ghost from countless missions. He was the kind of Marine who made rookies straighten up just by walking past. He nodded toward her. "Carter, right?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Good work today." Not many civilians would have had the guts to take charge. "I just did what needed to be done." He studied her face for a moment, as if trying to read a story she wasn't telling. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Emily's gaze drifted to the ground. "Not like this," she lied softly. He didn't press further, but his eyes lingered, curious. When she entered her room later, the photograph in her drawer seemed heavier than ever. She held it again, 6 faces smiling under a different sky. All gone now. She had promised herself never to lead again, never to carry the weight of decisions that could cost lives. Yet here she was, giving orders, calming chaos, leading by instinct. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The storm was coming, not the kind that drenched the earth, but the kind that tested the soul. And Emily Carter, the woman everyone called a trainee, didn't know that soon the name Iron Wolf would return, not as a ghost of her past, but as the identity she could never truly leave behind. The following week at Camp Waverly began under the weight of summer heat and simmering skepticism. The storm of gossip surrounding Emily Carter hadn't settled. If anything, it grew stronger. The Marines didn't like mysteries, and Emily was quickly becoming one. Rumors floated through the ranks like stray smoke. Some said she'd worked in disaster relief. Others whispered she was connected to intelligence services. A few joked that she was just lucky. A quiet girl who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Emily ignored all of it. She focused on her duties, her posture straight, her tone calm. She was learning the marine systems faster than any civilian before her. Inventory checks, supply tracking, convoy coordination. She absorbed every detail like muscle memory. But while her efficiency was undeniable, her silence made people uneasy. To most, silence in the military world was suspicious. One afternoon, during a logistics assessment drill, Sergeant Parker barked orders across the hangar bay. Wooden crates stacked 6 feet high lined the floor, labeled with codes and destinations. Trainees hurried to record, move, and report under pressure. Sweat slicked their faces. The air was filled with the hum of forklifts and shouting. Emily worked methodically at her station, noting every detail without hesitation. But when a recruit tripped and dropped a crate, the loud crash drew everyone's attention. Parker spun around furiously. Who packed that container? He roared. Emily stepped forward before the frightened recruit could speak. It was my section, sir. Your section? His voice hardened. Then it's your responsibility. Those contents are sensitive equipment. You think this is a classroom? You make one mistake here, people die in the field. Yes, Sergeant, she said, standing at attention, calm as still water. Next time, use your head before your hands, he snapped. And remember, this isn't some charity project. This is the United States Marine Corps. A few recruits snickered in the back. One muttered loud enough for her to hear, "Guess the office girl needs combat lessons." Emily didn't look back. She picked up her clipboard and continued her work. Her face didn't show it, but the words stung, not because of disrespect, but because she'd heard them before. In another place, years ago, under fire and smoke. That night, as the others rested, she stayed behind in the hangar. The overhead lights buzzed faintly as she repacked every crate herself, double-checking labels, tightening straps, and rearranging stacks until perfection replaced error. The base slept. Emily didn't. Sleep wasn't something she trusted anymore. From the shadows of the upper platform, Marcus Howley watched silently. He didn't say a word, just observed how she moved with precision and purpose. She wasn't driven by ambition or pride. She was driven by something else, something heavy. The next morning, the mood changed. The unit was preparing for a major convoy simulation, a full-scale logistics run designed to test how well recruits managed resources under time and stress. Emily was assigned to coordinate vehicle sequences and oversee supply routes. Captain Lyle, the administrative officer, glanced skeptically at her assignment. "Carter, you sure you're ready for this?" "Yes, sir," she replied. He sighed. "Fine. Just remember, you're not in command here. Observe. Don't interfere unless instructed." By midday, the convoy roared to life. Trucks rolled out in a line, kicking dust across the road. The heat shimmered above the asphalt as Emily monitored from the command tent, marking each vehicle's progress. Everything ran smoothly until the second hour, when a sudden mechanical failure halted the third truck, blocking the rest of the convoy on a narrow dirt road. Panic rippled through the ranks. The driver radioed frantically for orders, but communication lagged. Supplies stacked behind the stalled truck, and confusion grew. Parker wasn't nearby. The base frequency crackled with static. Emily stepped forward. "Switch to backup frequency," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Divert the fourth vehicle to bypass through Route Bravo. Keep the supplies moving." The communication tech hesitated. "We're supposed to wait for Sergeant Parker." "There's no time," she interrupted, tone sharp. "That road will bottleneck in 5 minutes. Move." The tech blinked, then obeyed. Within seconds, the convoy realigned, supplies rerouted, and movement restored. By the time Parker arrived, expecting chaos, the crisis was already contained. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded. "Mechanical failure, sir," Emily said evenly. "We redirected and resumed operation. No delay." He stared at her, then at the chart she'd drawn, clean, precise, efficient. After a long pause, he grunted, "Good initiative. Next time, don't act without clearance." "Yes, sir," she replied again, with that same quiet composure. Later, when the simulation ended successfully, whispers followed her everywhere. Some respected her now. Others resented her more. No one liked being shown up by a civilian, especially one who looked as fragile as she did. That evening, in the mess hall, conversations paused as she entered. Parker sat with other sergeants at one table. Marcus sat alone at another, polishing his gear. As Emily passed by, she heard one Marine mutter, "She acts like she's been through war." Marcus didn't look up, but his voice cut in sharply. "Maybe she has." The table went silent. Emily walked to an empty corner and began eating in peace. Across the room, Marcus's gaze lingered, unreadable. That night, Marcus found her outside, sitting on the steps of the barracks. The air was cool, filled with the chirping of night insects and the distant hum of generators. "You're not like the others," he said finally. She didn't look up. "Neither are you." He smirked. "Fair enough. But they're starting to talk. You don't flinch, you don't complain. You act before you're told. That's not how a trainee behaves." Emily sighed softly. "I'm just trying to be useful." "You're doing more than that," he said, leaning against the railing. "You're thinking like command. You've been in situations before where waiting got people killed, haven't you?" Her eyes hardened at his words. "We've all lost people, Sergeant." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, but the way you move, it's not loss. It's guilt." She froze, staring into the distance. "You shouldn't try to read me." "I'm not reading," he said quietly, just recognizing something familiar. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint echo of distant drills. Then Marcus said something that made her heart skip. "When I was deployed in Iraq, we had a saying for soldiers like you, the ones who kept their heads while everyone else lost theirs." "What saying?" she asked. He looked at her with a hint of a smile. "Iron Wolf." Emily's breath caught. Her hands tightened around the edge of the step. The phrase wasn't just words. It was a name, a shadow of the past she tried to bury. She swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "Never heard of it," she lied. Marcus didn't believe her, but he didn't press. "Good night, Carter," he said finally, walking away. She sat there long after he left, staring into the darkness, her heartbeat echoing like footsteps in memory. That night, sleep refused to come. She tossed under thin sheets, haunted by the faces from the photograph, her old team. The Iron Wolf Unit, a group of 6 civilians trained to lead rescue operations in war zones, known for their precision, courage, and refusal to quit. And the night it all went wrong. She saw flashes again, flames, broken radios, collapsing buildings. She heard Captain Wallace shouting, "Fall back!" Emily now, and her own voice cracking, "We can still save them." Before the explosion ripped through the air, she woke in a cold sweat, gasping. The barracks were silent, except for the rhythmic breathing of sleeping recruits. She sat up, staring out the window. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. It wasn't the storm outside that unsettled her. It was the one building inside her chest. They still saw her as a trainee. But soon, the world would remind them, some instincts can't be unlearned, and some names refuse to stay buried. The legend of Iron Wolf was stirring again. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Hiley had never been the type to get distracted. He was a man built from iron and fire, the kind of Marine who could walk through chaos with calm eyes. Every recruit at Camp Waverly knew his reputation. Unbreakable, unshakable, untouchable. But lately, something, or rather someone, had been breaking that pattern. Emily Carter. He watched her in silence for days after the convoy incident. The way she moved, the way she listened, even her silence was deliberate. She didn't just follow orders. She analyzed them. She didn't flinch at shouting or failure. While others stumbled through stress drills, she adapted, recalibrated, and somehow came out steady. Marcus had seen soldiers like that before. Soldiers who'd seen more than they'd ever say aloud. It started to bother him. During a morning briefing, Parker caught Marcus staring toward the back of the room. "Something wrong, huh?" Marcus shook his head. "No, sir. Just noticing who's actually paying attention." Parker followed his gaze and rolled his eyes. "Carter, she's a civilian. They all look alert until they get a taste of real pressure." Marcus didn't answer. He knew what real pressure looked like. A 1,000-yard stare, the silent breaths between orders, the eyes that never stopped calculating exits. Emily had all of it. Later that afternoon, during a stress response drill, Parker decided to push the civilians harder. "You'll be simulating an equipment failure in a live convoy route," he announced. "I'll be timing every second. You fall behind, you start over. Understand?" The group nodded. The drill began under a merciless sun. Trucks rumbled, radios buzzed, dust rose in choking clouds. Emily coordinated her section calmly, directing movements with quick, precise signals. Everything ran smoothly until Parker, seeking a reaction, deliberately cut power to their comms. The recruits froze. "Communications down." One shouted, "We're blind out here." Parker watched smugly, waiting for panic. But Emily didn't panic. She quickly grabbed a marker, drew a field map on the hood of a truck, and assigned visual signal roles to nearby recruits. "We go manual," she said, steady and sure. "Flags for directions, hand signs for confirmation. Keep the flow moving." Within minutes, the entire operation adapted flawlessly. When the comms flickered back on, Parker looked stunned. "Who authorized that adjustment?" "Carter," one recruit said proudly. "She took over." Parker glared at her. "Carter, you were supposed to wait for instructions." Emily stood at attention. "With respect, Sergeant, we didn't have time to wait." The silence was thick. Marcus, standing nearby, hid his smile. Parker's jaw tightened. "You think you're clever? This isn't a leadership camp." "I wasn't leading," she said softly. "I was helping." That simple sentence disarmed him. He barked something about chain of command and walked off. But Marcus knew what he'd just seen. That wasn't a reaction from a trainee. That was command instinct. After the drill, Marcus approached her near the equipment bay. She was cleaning dust from her hands, focused, unaware of his stare. "You just made Parker look like an idiot," Marcus said flatly. She didn't flinch. "That wasn't my goal." "Maybe not. But you're starting to make waves, Carter. People notice." She glanced up, her expression unreadable. "That a warning, Sergeant?" "Observation," he replied. "You handle chaos too well for someone learning the ropes. You've been under pressure before." "Combat, maybe?" Emily's eyes flickered, just slightly. "You're imagining things." Marcus crossed his arms. "Maybe, but I've seen soldiers freeze under less heat than you just handled. You didn't even hesitate. You drew a plan like it was second nature." Her voice softened. "If I hesitate, people get hurt. That's all." That answer, simple, stripped of ego, hit deeper than she realized. Marcus stepped closer. "You're hiding something." Her expression hardened. Everyone hides something, Sergeant. Their eyes locked. Two soldiers, one still wearing the uniform, one trying to forget what it felt like. Then she turned away, ending the conversation with silence. But silence, Marcus realized, could speak volumes. That night, the base glowed with floodlights, illuminating soldiers training in the distance. Marcus sat outside the barracks, a cigarette burning between his fingers, unlit as always. He didn't smoke. He just liked the ritual. He saw Emily walk by, heading toward the storage hangar. Curiosity won over patience. He followed, quietly, staying in the shadows. Inside, she was alone, sorting equipment. But it wasn't the kind of sorting assigned by Parker. She was reorganizing the layout, adjusting placements based on accessibility and weight distribution, optimizing routes like someone who'd managed crisis zones. Marcus leaned against the doorway. That's not in your job description. She didn't startle. Neither is watching people work, Sergeant. He chuckled quietly. Fair. He stepped closer. You think I'm here to spy on you? I think you're here because you're curious. He smirked. Maybe. Or maybe I just can't figure out how someone like you ends up here, taking orders from people half your caliber. Emily kept working. I didn't come here to lead. Then why are you here? For the first time, she hesitated. Her hands paused on the crate. Because I'm not good at forgetting, she said softly. Marcus frowned, studying her. Forgetting what? People who didn't make it out. The hangar fell silent. The air hummed faintly with electricity, the sound of fluorescent lights filling the void her words left behind. Marcus realized then that her calm wasn't peace. It was punishment. She wasn't here to learn. She was here to atone. The next morning, Parker held another set of stress drills, endurance training with mock evacuations. Emily's section was paired with active recruits, including Marcus himself. The exercise required teamwork under simulated attack, sirens, smoke, and time pressure. Parker's voice thundered across the field. Move like lives depend on it. Because in real life they do. The siren blared. Smoke filled the air. Recruits stumbled, coughing and shouting. Emily's eyes narrowed. She scanned the field like a chessboard. When two recruits went the wrong way, she sprinted after them. This way, she shouted. You'll bottleneck the exit. They obeyed instinctively. Even Marcus found himself falling into her rhythm. Her commands were clear, confident, and tactical. He realized he wasn't the one leading, she was. When the simulation ended, Parker stormed over. Carter, you were giving orders again. Emily's breath was steady. Yes, sir. The team was breaking formation. You're not a Marine, Parker growled. You don't command here. Marcus stepped forward. With respect, sir, she kept us from failing the drill. The sergeant glared at him. You taking her side, Halle? I'm taking the side of results, Marcus replied. Parker's lips pressed tight, but he said nothing more. As the recruits dispersed, Marcus caught Emily's eye. She didn't thank him. She just nodded, a small gesture of acknowledgement between soldiers who didn't need words. That evening, the two crossed paths again at the training field, where the sunset painted the sky in burnt orange. Marcus tossed a bottle of water toward her. Not bad today, he said. You handled that drill like a pro. She smirked faintly. Didn't know you gave compliments. I don't, he said, smiling slightly. But you're making me reconsider. For the first time, a shadow of warmth touched her face. It was brief, but real. Don't start that, Sergeant. I'm not looking for validation. Didn't think you were, he said. Just saying, whatever you're running from, you're still carrying it like a soldier. Her eyes softened, but her tone stayed guarded. Some loads don't come off easy. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. But some are easier when you stop carrying them alone. She looked away before he could read her expression. Somewhere deep inside, a part of her that had been frozen for years stirred. The part that once trusted people, once believed in teams, once led others into danger, believing she could save them all. Marcus's presence unsettled her, not because of his authority, but because he saw through her armor too easily. That night, as she lay awake, Emily's mind drifted again to the past, the Iron Wolf emblem stitched onto her old jacket, the mission briefings whispered under candlelight, the faces of her lost team. And Marcus's words echoed, "Some loads are easier when you stop carrying them alone." She turned toward the window, where moonlight washed over the barracks wall. For the first time since arriving at Camp Waverly, she felt something unfamiliar creeping back into her life. Not fear, not guilt, but the faint, dangerous spark of hope. She didn't know it yet, but Marcus Hallar, the man they called Iron Wolf, was about to awaken the commander she'd buried. And the Marines who mocked her would soon find out what real leadership looked like when destiny called the name Iron Wolf once more. The storm rolled in just after dusk. Lightning slashed across the sky like the world was tearing itself apart, and the wind howled through the barracks windows with a fury that made even the veterans tense. Camp Waverly had seen storms before, but not like this. The Weather Service had warned of a violent front moving in from the coast. Still, Sergeant Parker, in his usual stubborn fashion, refused to cancel the night drills. "Real soldiers don't get rain delays," he barked. "This is as close to the field as you're going to get." The recruits groaned. Thunder rumbled, the kind that vibrated through the ground, and the rain came in sheets. Emily stood at the edge of the formation, her poncho whipping around her shoulders, eyes narrowed at the chaos unfolding. Marcus Hawley watched from the sidelines, disapproving but silent. He knew Parker's kind, men who confused toughness with recklessness. When the first drill started, it was meant to be simple, a supply transport simulation through the lower ravine. But the storm turned everything unpredictable. Mudslides formed, visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the radio signals began cutting out. Parker ordered them forward anyway. "Move it. Weather doesn't care about your comfort." Emily stayed near the back, her eyes scanning the convoy route. Her instincts screamed that this was wrong. She could already see the water pooling dangerously near the lower bridge. "Sergeant, that bridge won't hold long," she called over the wind. Parker turned on her, face red under the rain. "You don't give orders here, Carter." "I'm not giving orders. I'm giving a warning." But he wasn't listening. The convoy pushed forward. Marcus, watching from the command tent, clenched his jaw. He could hear the static of broken comms, the shouting through interference, and one name that kept cutting through: Carter. Minutes later, chaos. A flash flood tore through the ravine like a monster waking up. One of the transport vehicles skidded sideways and jammed against the rail. 2 recruits were trapped inside. "Bridge is collapsing." Someone screamed. "They're stuck." Without hesitation, Emily dropped her gear and sprinted toward the flood. The others shouted after her, but she didn't stop. Her boots hit mud and water with punishing force as she ran down the embankment. Marcus's voice thundered through the radio. "Carter, stand down." "That's an order." But she ignored it. The truck was tilting, the flood pulling it inch by inch toward the broken edge. Emily climbed onto the side rail, gripping the slick metal. Through the shattered window, she saw one of the recruits, barely 19, gasping, trapped by the seatbelt. She drew her knife and slashed the strap, hauling the boy free. The second recruit was pinned under a loose beam. The truck lurched, the current roaring louder. Then she heard Marcus's boots behind her, heavy in the mud. "You're insane," he shouted, grabbing her shoulder. "You can't hold this thing." She yelled back over the storm, "I'm not leaving them." Together, They heaved the beam away, freeing the second recruit. Marcus dragged him up the embankment while Emily stayed to secure the line. She wrapped the rope around the truck's frame, anchoring it to a nearby support pole. "Carter, move!" Marcus roared. The moment she leapt clear, the bridge gave way. The truck disappeared into the raging water below. They collapsed in the mud, soaked and trembling, but alive. Around them, the others watched in stunned silence. The woman they'd mocked, the so-called trainee, had just saved lives under conditions that would have broken most Marines. When Parker arrived, his face was pale. "You disobeyed orders," he shouted, though his voice wavered. Emily stood straight, rain streaming down her face. "Your orders would have killed them, sir. You don't talk to me like that," he barked. Marcus stepped forward, voice cutting like steel. "Enough. She did what you should have done." Parker glared at him. "You're out of line, Holly." Marcus didn't blink. "And you're unfit to lead in crisis. Those recruits owe their lives to her." The tension crackled heavier than the lightning around them. Parker's jaw clenched, but he couldn't argue with the results, not when everyone had seen it. He stormed off without another word. That night, after the chaos had settled, Marcus found Emily sitting alone under the barracks awning. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. She was staring out at the broken bridge, her posture stiff, distant. He approached quietly. "You could have drowned out there." "I've drowned before," she said softly. He sat beside her. "You're not talking about water, are you?" She shook her head. "No, just ghosts." Marcus studied her face in the dim light. There were stories behind those eyes, stories that went deeper than any recruit's training. "You've done this before," he said quietly. "This isn't new for you." "I told you. I'm just—" He interrupted gently. "Don't insult me, Carter. You operated like a squad leader under combat pressure. That's not something you learn in a week. Who are you?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of her poncho. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me." She looked at him then, really looked. "Iron Wolf. That's what they used to call me." Marcus froze. The name hit him like a bolt. Iron Wolf wasn't just a call sign. It was legendary. The moniker of a Marine Special Operations commander who'd vanished 3 years ago after a mission went wrong overseas. "You?" he said slowly. "You were Iron Wolf?" She turned away. "Was, not anymore. Everyone thought you died in Kandahar." "Maybe I did," she murmured. "Part of me never came back." Marcus was silent for a long time. He'd heard the stories. A covert rescue gone bad, civilians caught in the crossfire, command silence afterward. No one ever learned the full truth. But now, sitting beside him, was the ghost of that legend, a woman who'd saved lives tonight with the same instincts that once made her feared and respected. "Why hide?" he asked quietly. "Because heroes make mistakes too," she whispered. "And when they do, people stop calling them heroes." Her voice cracked then, barely audible. "I lost my team, Halai. Every one of them. I trained them, I led them, and I led them into a trap. They died because they trusted me. I came here to disappear, not to lead again." Marcus exhaled slowly. "You didn't fail them." "I did," she said sharply. "You don't understand." He turned to face her, eyes fierce. "I do. I've buried men too. And I've spent years thinking if I'd been smarter, faster, better, they'd still be breathing. But that's not leadership, Carter. That's survivor's guilt." She looked away, her throat tightening. He continued, voice softer now. "You saved lives tonight. That's what Iron Wolf does. Doesn't matter what name you use now. That part of you isn't dead." She met his gaze, the storm reflected in her eyes. "You really think that woman's still in me?" I don't think, he said. I know. For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain finally stopped, leaving only the rhythmic drip of water from the eaves. The air was thick with the kind of silence that changes people. Finally, Emily rose. If you're right, she said, then I'll have to start earning that name again. Marcus stood too. Then let's start tomorrow. She almost smiled. And Parker? He smirked. Leave him to me. That night, as the base lights flickered in the receding storm, word of the flood rescue spread quietly among the ranks. Recruits whispered her name in disbelief. Carter saved them. She moved like a veteran. She wasn't afraid of anything. And by dawn, one phrase began circulating, half in awe, half in pride. Iron Wolf stood ready. Marcus heard it too. And for the first time, he smiled. He knew this was only the beginning. The storm hadn't just washed away the bridge. It had washed away her silence. Iron Wolf was waking up again. Morning at Camp Waverly arrived heavy with damp fog and rumors. The rain had stopped, but the storm's memory lingered in the torn ground and broken bridge. Everywhere recruits gathered in small circles, whispering about the woman who defied orders and pulled 2 men from death. Emily Carter walked through them in silence. No salute, no swagger. Just quiet eyes and a jaw set with purpose. She didn't care about the talk, but she could feel it. Every step she took now carried weight. And somewhere, behind the walls of the administrative office, Sergeant Parker was watching. He'd replayed the storm footage a dozen times on the security screen, jaw grinding tighter with each pass. Every clip showed the same thing. Carter moving with precision, issuing commands like she owned the field, and Halle backing her. That burned worse than the humiliation. To Parker, order meant hierarchy, and a civilian stepping out of line, especially one who made him look incompetent, was a threat. He opened her file again. Emily Carter, civilian contractor, logistics background, temporary assignment. No mention of Iron Wolf, no record of special service. Nothing. How does a ghost join my base? He muttered. Outside, Marcus Halle was overseeing morning drills. He barked orders in his usual iron-edged tone, but his eyes kept drifting toward Emily. She was different today, quieter but focused. When the recruits stumbled through the obstacle course, she moved alongside them, encouraging, correcting form, offering help. Not a commander, a teacher. Eyes forward. Marcus shouted at one struggling private. Follow Carter's lead. The recruit blinked. Sir, she's not. She is today, Marcus snapped. Emily shot him a look, half irritation, half gratitude. You trying to get me in trouble again, Sergeant? Already did, he said. Might as well make it worth it. For a brief moment, the tension between them broke. He saw something like a smile flicker at the corner of her mouth, small, fleeting, but real. That afternoon, Parker called Marcus into his office. The blinds were drawn. The air smelled like stale coffee and anger. Close the door, Parker ordered. Marcus did. You're getting too close to that woman, Parker said bluntly. She's a contractor. She's not one of us. She saved my recruits, Marcus replied. She disobeyed me. Marcus leaned forward. She saved them. Parker slammed his hand on the desk. You think I don't know that? You think I care what the grunts are whispering out there? Iron Wolf, legend, leader. It's poisoning my camp. And you're feeding it. Marcus stayed calm, though his pulse was steady fire. Maybe the poison isn't her. Maybe it's pride. Parker's eyes narrowed. Watch yourself, Halle. You're on thin ice. Marcus turned to leave, but Parker's voice followed, sharp and low. That woman's going to be a problem. When she falls, I won't be there to catch her. Marcus froze at the door. Then you'd better pray I am. He walked out, leaving the office door swinging behind him. That evening, the fog thickened again, swallowing the base in ghost-gray light. Emily was alone in the hangar, repairing damaged gear from the storm drill. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind replayed the past. The mission, the gunfire, the screams she couldn't stop hearing. She closed her eyes and saw the symbol burned into her memory, the wolf insignia on her old unit's patch. Alpha 9 Iron Wolf Division. All gone. A sudden sound pulled her from the thought, footsteps. She looked up to find a tall figure standing by the doorway, half lit. Didn't think I'd find you hiding here, Marcus said softly. Not hiding, she replied. Just fixing what's broken. He stepped closer. Including yourself? She met his eyes, unamused. You really don't quit, do you? Not when I see a soldier worth fighting for. She sighed, setting down the wrench. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, he said. You think you came here to disappear. But what you're doing, helping recruits, correcting drills, stepping in when no one else will, that's leadership. You can't turn that off. Emily's voice trembled just slightly. Leadership got people killed. And fear will get more killed, Marcus said. You can't rewrite the past, Carter. But you can damn well decide what comes next. Her eyes softened, and then the hangar lights flickered. From outside came the distant grind of tires. Two unfamiliar SUVs rolled through the gates, government plates glinting in the dark. Marcus frowned. We weren't expecting visitors. Emily froze. Oh no. Within minutes, the base was on alert. Parker appeared in full uniform, saluting as two officers stepped out of the vehicles. One wore the insignia of Internal Command Investigation, ICI. The other carried a tablet and an expression that screamed paperwork and punishment. Sergeant Parker, the lead officer said. We're here for a personnel inquiry. Civilian contractor Emily Carter. We need to see her immediately. Parker smirked. Right this way, sir. Marcus arrived just as they led her out of the hangar. What's going on? He demanded. Stay out of this, Holly, Parker snapped. Command wants her. Guess our trainee wasn't who she said she was. Emily stood still, raincoat half buttoned, expression calm, but eyes burning with the knowledge this day would come. It's all right, she said quietly to Marcus. I knew they'd find me eventually. The officer glanced up. So it's true. Captain Emily Carter of the Iron Wolf Division, presumed Kia. You've been living under civilian cover for 3 years. Gasps rippled through the watching recruits. Marcus's throat tightened. Captain? Emily closed her eyes. Not anymore. The officer continued, ignoring emotion. You're to be escorted to Fort Bastion for formal debrief. Orders from command. Pack your things. Marcus stepped forward. She saved people here. You can't just drag her off like a criminal. This isn't your jurisdiction, Sergeant, the officer said coldly. You'll stand down. Parker folded his arms. Looks like the ghost finally got caught. Emily turned to him then, her voice low but cutting through the rain. You should be careful celebrating another person's fall, Parker. The ground's never as solid as you think. He flinched, but said nothing. Later that night, Marcus found her sitting in the holding tent, wrists free, but posture rigid. A single lamp cast long shadows across her face. They said I'll be gone by morning, she murmured. Then I'll drive you myself, Marcus said. She looked up, startled. Why? Because I've seen what kind of soldier you are. And if command tries to bury that again, I'll make sure someone remembers who you really were. Her voice broke slightly. I don't want them to remember that person. She made mistakes. He leaned closer. She saved lives tonight. And 3 years ago, she tried to do the same. You're not running from guilt. You're carrying honor heavier than anyone I've met. She blinked hard, holding back tears. You really think I can come back from this? He smiled faintly. Iron Wolf doesn't die in a storm. She waits for one. For the first time in years, Emily laughed, short, quiet, real. You're impossible, Holly. Yeah, he said. That's why we'd make a good team. Outside, the night hummed with restless wind. Rumors still traveled through the camp about the woman being taken, the officer's arrival, the truth behind her name. But among the whispers, something else had begun: respect. Every recruit who'd once dismissed her now stood a little taller when they said her name. Iron Wolf. And as Marcus watched the convoy headlights approach to take her away, one thought burned in his chest. This wasn't the end. Because legends like hers don't fade. They wait for the right moment to rise again. The road to Fort Bastion stretched for miles, long, lonely, and painted in morning fog. The convoy moved silently, its engines humming low as the sun broke through the clouds in dull streaks. Emily Carter sat in the back seat, wrists unshackled, but hands clasped tightly together. She wasn't a prisoner, not yet, but the air around her carried the weight of one. Across from her sat Major Leland Pierce, head of Internal Command Investigation. His expression was carved from marble, the kind of man who smiled only when paperwork went perfectly. You've been quiet, Captain, he said finally, breaking the silence. Not a captain anymore, she replied softly. He tilted his head. You can drop the false humility. Disappearing for 3 years, changing your name. It's not the kind of thing you do unless you're hiding something bigger than guilt. Emily looked out the window at the barren fields flashing by. Maybe I was hiding from people like you. He smiled faintly. Oh, I don't doubt that. Fort Bastion wasn't a place for visitors. Its gray concrete walls stood high and thick, the kind of fortress where secrets went in and never came out. The convoy rolled through the gate, passing guards who stood stiffly at attention. When Emily stepped out, a dozen eyes followed her, recognition flickering behind their trained professionalism. Some had heard the name Iron Wolf whispered in stories, the ghost commander who led the doomed Alpha 9. Now the ghost had returned. They escorted her to an interrogation room, a small, cold space with a metal table and 2 chairs. The walls were bare, except for a single recording camera. Pierce placed a folder in front of her. Thick. He didn't open it right away. He just looked at her, studying every twitch and breath. You were reported here during Operation Burnlight, Kandahar Province, he said. But we both know that wasn't true. Emily didn't answer. He continued, your unit was ambushed. 12 men. Only 1 body was recovered. Partially, yours. Her voice was steady. Because the rest burned. Pierce leaned forward. And yet somehow you walked away. How? Her eyes darkened. Because I had to. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then she spoke again, her tone low and distant. Burnlight wasn't supposed to be a combat mission. We were tasked to extract a humanitarian envoy aid workers pinned between local insurgents. We were told it was a simple operation. No hostiles confirmed. She paused, a memory flickering behind her eyes. But it was a setup. Intel was wrong, or maybe deliberately wrong. We walked straight into an ambush. Mortar from both ridges. 2 Humvees gone in the first minute. Her voice grew quieter. I remember the screams. The smell of burning tires. One of my men, Jenkins, tried to radio HQ, but comms were jammed. We were cut off. I ordered them to move toward the riverbed for cover, but... She stopped, swallowing hard. That's where they hit us again. Pierce scribbled something in his notes. You're saying Command's intel was compromised? She gave a bitter laugh. Compromised is a polite word. Someone fed us false coordinates. Someone wanted Iron Wolf Division wiped out. Pierce's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered with interest. Any proof? I brought one of their data drives when I escaped, she said. Encrypted. I turned it over when I reported to base. 3 days later, I was declared dead. The drive disappeared. Pierce sat back. Convenient. Emily glared at him. For who? He didn't answer. Hours passed. They questioned her, replayed footage, reviewed her past commendations, then replayed her silence. Every word was weighed like ammunition. At dusk, Pierce closed the file. You'll remain here for the next 72 hours while Command reviews your record. Consider yourself in limbo. Limbo, she repeated. That's what you call it when someone's reputation dies before they do. Pierce smiled coldly. Welcome back, Captain. He left her alone in the room. The lights buzzed faintly. Emily stared at her reflection in the two-way mirror. For the first time in years, she saw the person she'd buried. Not Emily Carter, the quiet civilian, but the Iron Wolf who once commanded with fire and faith. And she hated that she didn't recognize her anymore. Back at Camp Waverly, Marcus Holley was pacing his quarters. The base felt wrong without her. Too quiet, too ordinary. He couldn't shake the image of her being taken away, her eyes calm, but her silence screaming for help. He pulled up the base communication terminal, digging into restricted files. He knew the risks. Accessing ICI movements without clearance was career suicide. But he needed answers. When he finally found a report tagged Operation Burnlight, Confidential Debrief, his pulse quickened. Most of it was blacked out, but one line stood clear. Operation compromised following intelligence leak from internal command liaison. Target unit eliminated. Data unrecovered. Marcus frowned. Internal command liaison. That meant someone high up fed her team false info. Someone within the system wanted her gone. He slammed the terminal closed. Whatever game Pierce was playing, it wasn't justice. It was a cover-up. And Marcus Holley had never been good at keeping quiet. At Fort Bastion, night fell hard. Emily sat on the narrow cot in her holding room, staring at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights hummed like an old heartbeat. Sleep refused to come. It hadn't for years. Her thoughts drifted to the people she'd lost. Jenkins, Alvarez, Stone, and Torres. The ones who never came back. Their laughter still echoed in the cracks of her memory. Then, faintly, she heard footsteps in the corridor. 2 guards passed, talking quietly. Command wants her shipped out tomorrow, one said. Pierce says she's unstable. Unstable? The other replied. She saved lives at Waverly. Doesn't matter. They're wiping this whole story clean. Their voices faded down the hall. Emily exhaled slowly. So that was it. They were going to erase her again. Not this time. She stood and crossed to the small metal table. Her reflection in the dark window stared back. Older, sharper, harder. The Iron Wolf hadn't died in Kandahar. She'd just been waiting for the right battle to fight. The next morning, the guards arrived early. But when they opened the door, the room was empty. The cot was untouched, the window cracked open. Barely enough for a person to slip through, but somehow she had. Pierce arrived moments later, furious. Lock down the facility. He barked. She's gone. Sir, one guard stammered. How did she... She's Iron Wolf, Pierce growled. That's how. Meanwhile, a black pickup rolled across the desert road heading east, toward Camp Waverly. Behind the wheel, Marcus Hale's jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the horizon. Beside him, sitting quietly, wearing a borrowed jacket and determination in her gaze, was Emily. I thought you'd wait until morning, he said. She smirked faintly. You thought wrong. He shook his head, half in disbelief. You broke out of Fort Bastion. I walked out of it, she corrected. Big difference. He glanced at her. Now they'll come after both of us. Her tone was calm, steady, almost cold. Then we'll give them a reason to. What's the plan? Expose Burnlight, she said. The truth they buried. The one they killed my team for. Marcus nodded slowly. Then I'm with you. She looked at him, eyes shining faintly in the dawn light. You don't even know how deep this goes. He smiled. Doesn't matter. Iron Wolf stands ready, right? She turned toward the road ahead, the sun breaking through storm clouds. Yes, she said. Iron Wolf stands ready. Back at Fort Bastion, Pierce watched a red alert flash across his monitor. Subject: Carter. AIM-ILY status. Escaped associate. Halle, Marcus missing. He clenched his fist. You can run, he muttered, but you can't hide from the system. But even he didn't know, the system was about to crack wide open. Because Iron Wolf wasn't running anymore. She was coming back to finish the mission they never wanted her to complete. The desert road stretched endlessly under the early morning sun. Dust rose behind the black pickup as Marcus Halle drove, his hands tight on the wheel. Beside him, Emily Carter, once Iron Wolf, sat quietly, eyes scanning the horizon. Every mile brought them closer to the truth, and with it, danger. Command isn't going to let this go quietly, Marcus said finally, breaking the silence. I know, Emily replied. Her tone was calm, but there was fire underneath. That's why we don't give them a chance. Marcus glanced at her. You're serious about exposing Burnlight? She didn't flinch. Every lie they fed us, every teammate they left behind, it ends now. The weight in her voice silenced him. He knew the names she carried, the lives burned into memory. Iron Wolf wasn't just a legend. She was a woman shaped by loss, guilt, and unbreakable resolve. Their first stop was an abandoned safe house in the outskirts of the city, a place Emily had prepped for contingencies. Years ago. It smelled faintly of dust and oil, but the security systems were intact, cameras online, encrypted channels ready. Emily entered the codes, the room humming to life. Screens lit up with maps, satellite feeds, and files she'd downloaded before disappearing from Fort Bastion. Marcus leaned over, impressed. You really planned for all this? Always, she said. When you survive a mission like Burnlight, you learn you can't trust anyone. On the main monitor, she pulled up a heavily redacted document labeled Operation Burnlight, Internal Report. With a few keystrokes, the blacked-out sections vanished, revealing the truth buried for 3 years. Alpha, 9 compromised due to false intel provided by Internal Command Liaison. Operation Failure resulted in 12 fatalities. Surviving operative presumed dead. Data compromised and removed from official record. Marcus read the lines carefully. Internal Command Liaison? That's the same note Pierce used in the interrogation. Emily's jaw tightened. Exactly. They made me disappear to cover it up. A pause. Then she said quietly, almost to herself, They killed my team, Halle, and they think they can bury it. Marcus clenched his fists. Then we make them remember. The plan was simple, though dangerous. They would retrieve the remaining encrypted drives from Fort Bastion, evidence Pierce and his allies had tried to destroy. Once obtained, they could broadcast the truth, who betrayed Alpha 9 and why the mission failed. Emily outlined the route, pointing to vulnerabilities in the security perimeter. There's a service tunnel here. Unmonitored cameras during night rotations. It's our way in. Marcus studied it. This is Fort Bastion. High security, one mistake, and we're dead. I've done worse, she said, voice sharp. And survived. He nodded. Then let's go save history. Night fell like a blanket over Fort Bastion. The wind howled faintly, carrying a chill that cut through the desert air. Emily and Marcus approached the perimeter on foot, dressed in black tactical gear. Shadows became their allies. The service tunnel was exactly as Emily remembered, dark, narrow, and silent. They crawled through, every heartbeat echoing in their ears. At the end, a reinforced door led to the data storage unit. Emily checked her watch. This is it. Once we're in, we have 15 minutes before the next security sweep. Marcus nodded. Ready when you are. Together, they breached the door using a combination of code-cracking devices and sheer skill. The locks clicked, and the heavy steel door swung open with a whisper. Inside, the storage room was cold, sterile, and filled with server racks humming faintly. Emily went straight to the central terminal. Fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing firewalls and encryption layers with precision. Marcus stood guard, scanning the corridor. Almost there, she muttered. A final code sequence. Enter. The drives unlocked. Data poured onto their portable drive. Files, videos, logs, names, and evidence of betrayal. Marcus's eyes widened as he scrolled through files showing high-ranking officers intentionally feeding false intel. They did this on purpose. Your team? Emily didn't respond. She kept her eyes on the screen, confirming every file. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she swallowed them back. No one forgets this. Not anymore. As they secured the drive, alarms suddenly blared. A red strobe flashed across the storage room. Too fast, Marcus muttered, grabbing Emily's arm. Move! They ran, retracing their steps through the tunnel. Security guards poured into the corridors, guns drawn. Emily's heart pounded, not with fear, but with the sharp edge of adrenaline and focus. Left, she shouted, dragging Marcus down a side passage. They emerged into the night, only to find more guards blocking the path to the extraction point. Marcus pulled her behind a low wall. We're trapped. Emily scanned the area. Then she smirked faintly. Not if we're smart. She tossed a smoke grenade. Thick white smoke engulfed the courtyard, obscuring their movements. Marcus followed her, moving silently and swiftly. They slipped past the guards, reaching the perimeter fence. Emily pulled out a grappling hook, anchoring it to the wall. Up, she said. Marcus followed, muscles straining as they climbed. Once over the fence, they ran toward the desert, freedom for now. Behind them, the alarm lights painted the night in red, warning of the coming pursuit. Hours later, back at the safe house, they examined the files in detail. Names, dates, orders all pointed to a single conspiracy. Fort Bastion. Leadership had orchestrated the failure of Burnlight to cover a covert operation gone wrong. Emily sat, jaw tight. They wanted Alpha 9 wiped out because the unit was too effective. Too many secrets. Too many witnesses. Marcus shook his head. They'll try to bury it again. She looked at him, her eyes cold and sharp. Not this time. This time, we fight back. A long silence. Then Marcus smiled faintly. Iron Wolf stands ready. She returned the look, a flicker of the old fire shining. Let's finish this. The next day, Pierce's office received a cryptic message. All classified Fort Bastion files compromised. Operation Burnlight exposed. Evidence uploaded to public channels. You have 24 hours to respond. Pierce slammed his fist on the desk. Find them, now. But Emily and Marcus were already gone. Shadows in the desert, untouchable, carrying the truth the command wanted buried. As news of the leak spread, the media began picking up fragments. Senators demanded answers. Investigators reopened Burnlight. Names that had been erased resurfaced. At Camp Waverly, the recruits whispered the name with awe. Iron Wolf. Back at the safe house, Emily leaned back in her chair, finally letting herself exhale. Marcus poured a coffee, watching her. "You okay?" he asked. "I will be," she said, her voice steady. "For the first time in 3 years, I'm not hiding. I'm not running. I'm ready," Marcus nodded. "Good, because this fight isn't over." She smirked. "It never is." Outside, the desert stretched endlessly. But for the first time in years, Iron Wolf didn't feel lost. She was alive, she was strong, and she had allies she could trust. The past had caught up, yes, but it didn't control her anymore. And somewhere in the distance, Marcus knew, the storm was coming again. But this time, they'd be ready. The desert wind swept across the barren canyon where Emily Carter, Marcus Hall, and a handful of loyal allies had gathered. By nightfall, the sky was ink black, punctuated with stars. It was the perfect stage for the reckoning. Emily stared at the encrypted drives spread across the hood of a black SUV. Each file, each piece of evidence exposed the lies and betrayals that had cost Alpha 9 everything. Names of high-ranking officers, falsified reports, and recorded orders all compiled, ready to reveal the conspiracy behind Operation Burnlight. Marcus leaned against the vehicle, arms crossed, eyes scanning the horizon. "They'll come for us," he said. "Pierce isn't a forgiving type." Emily's eyes burned with determination. "Let them. This is the truth, Halle. No one can stop it now. Not him, not the system." Inside Fort Bastion, Major Leland Pierce paced frantically. His office phone rang constantly, subordinates demanding instructions, alerts of compromised files, and leaking information that threatened to explode across national news. Pierce slammed the receiver down. "Find Carter. Find Halle. Now." His words were almost hysterical. For the first time, Pierce realized that Iron Wolf wasn't a ghost anymore. She was a storm, and she was coming for him. Emily and Marcus had anticipated resistance. They positioned themselves in an abandoned warehouse near the city outskirts, using its high vantage points to monitor Fort Bastion's response. Every patrol route, every security camera had been noted during previous reconnaissance. "Here's the plan," Emily said. "We let Pierce think he has control. We bait him into the open. Then we hit with the evidence." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And the guards?" "They're expendable distractions," Emily said bluntly. "We move fast. We strike harder. By the time he realizes, it'll be over." The drive was connected to a satellite uplink. She typed in the final command sequence, preparing to broadcast Burnlight's truth to the press, military oversight committees, and social media simultaneously. Marcus watched her fingers fly over the keyboard. "You're really going public?" he asked. "I don't need permission," she said. "Alpha 9 deserves that. My team deserves that. The world deserves the truth." Fort Bastion security teams moved in waves. Pierce arrived at the front gate, flanked by armed officers. Surveillance cameras caught flickering shadows, Emily and Marcus, blending perfectly with the night. Pierce's face twisted in fury. "Cut the feed," he barked. "No one touches the systems without my authorization." It was too late. The broadcast began, displaying live documents. Footage from the original operation, intercepted communications proving intentional betrayal, and damning emails between top brass implicating Pierce and his allies. The words on the screen cut through the tension like a scalpel. Operation Burnlight. Internal cover-up exposed Iron Wolf survives. Evidence of treachery provided soldiers inside the base stopped. Officers argued, and the command chain fractured instantly. Pierce slammed his fists on the console, eyes wild. Shut it down. Shut it all down. Meanwhile, Emily and Marcus moved in. Using stealth and precise coordination, they neutralized perimeter guards with non-lethal methods. Emily's movements were a blur, trained, lethal, and unstoppable. Marcus, solid and unflinching, protected her flank. Together, they moved like a unit forged in fire. Pierce finally realized the intruders were inside the compound. He grabbed a pistol and ran toward the control center, only to find himself facing Emily. "You're too late, Pierce," she said, voice cold and sharp. "Your lies end here." He raised his weapon. "Carter, I gave you everything the country owes you." "Not anymore," she said. She disarmed him in one swift motion, the gun clattering across the concrete floor. Marcus stepped forward, cuffing Pierce with a pair of tactical restraints. "Game over," he said. Pierce struggled, red-faced, but it was too late. The evidence had gone public. His career, his reputation, his freedom, all collapsing. The broadcast continued, revealing every hidden atrocity, every false order, every life lost due to Pierce's ambition. Across the nation, the reaction was immediate. Journalists mobilized, senators demanded hearings, and social media exploded with outrage. Emily watched the feed, feeling a strange weight lift from her chest. She allowed herself a small smile. Alpha 9's honor was restored. Her team's names would never be forgotten. Marcus glanced at her. "You did it." She nodded, voice soft but steady. "We did it, together." Hours later, in the aftermath, Emily and Marcus walked the perimeter of Fort Bastion, surveying the chaos. Investigators were arriving, soldiers were questioning events, and Pierce had been placed under arrest. The truth was now unstoppable. Emily's eyes scanned the horizon. "It's done," she whispered. Marcus nodded, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "Almost. One last thing remains." She tilted her head. "What's that?" "Standing ready," he said simply. "Iron Wolf doesn't stop now. Not ever. You're back, and the world needs you." Emily's jaw tightened. She looked at him, then at the desert stretching endlessly beyond the base. The wind lifted her hair, whispering like ghosts from the past. For the first time in years, she felt whole. She felt alive. And for the first time, she accepted the name she had buried, the legacy she thought she had lost. "Yes," she said, voice firm. "Iron Wolf stands ready." Weeks later, in a press conference held by the Department of Defense, Emily faced the world. The media flashed cameras, microphones hovered, and senators questioned. She wore her old Alpha 9 jacket, the Iron Wolf insignia visible. "This isn't about me," she said clearly, voice unwavering. "This is about my team. Alpha 9, every soldier who gave their life for a mission, and every lie that tried to erase them from history. The truth matters, and we can't let it be hidden." Her words resonated. They were powerful, precise, and undeniable. She had turned trauma into purpose, loss into strength, and betrayal into justice. Marcus stood at the back, arms crossed, a faint proud smile on his face. He knew this was only the beginning of her second life. The life Iron Wolf would now lead openly, without fear, without hiding, without apology. The crowd erupted in applause, not for her alone, but for the courage, loyalty, and unwavering commitment she represented. Later, in private, Marcus approached her. "So, what's next, Captain?" Emily looked at him, eyes gleaming with quiet determination. "Next, we make sure no one ever forgets Alpha 9. We honor them, and we prepare for whatever comes next." He nodded. "And I thought I was the one standing ready." She smirked faintly. "We both are. Iron Wolf doesn't stand alone." Outside, the sun set over the base. The desert glowed gold and red, a new day dawning. Shadows of the past lingered, but they were no longer chains. They were reminders of the fire that forged Iron Wolf, a soldier, a leader, a legend reborn. And as the wind whispered across the sand, one thing was clear. Iron Wolf had returned. Iron Wolf stood ready. And nothing, no betrayal, no storm, no system, could stop her again.